two that I premiered was called Cleaning Headstones. There is myself at the grave of my second great-grandfather. It's a stone that I kind of discovered with one of those county history books. And I went to find it, and I was thrilled that it was super dirty, so I was able to test out this cleaning method that I've been trying. So how did I get started into cleaning gravestones? This is the story of the Bethel Lutheran Cemetery at Clare City in Roberts County, South Dakota. I have 3 branches of my family that were kind of charter members of the church built there. And they're lying at rest at the cemetery, including my great-grandma, who's the only great-grandparent that I had the opportunity to know in my lifetime. So it started out going there every year, just paying my respects to my great-grandmother. I knew her till I was about 16. So we go out around her birthday every year. I've been going out over 10 years now. It's become kind of one of the biggest fun expeditions of the year while I'm exploring cemeteries. Usually go with my cousin. So there's over 20 gravestones that we found now that are of a relation to our family. So I've been tending those graves for about 3 or 4 years now with the cleaner that I use. And here's a picture of myself at the Bethel Cemetery sign. And then there's me with my great-grandma's grave. So then took me a while to ask up the courage, but last May I met with Ryan, the manager at Riverside Cemetery in Aberdeen, and I asked his permission if I was able to volunteer cleaning some headstones out at Riverside. So I told him I would focus on the infants and children of pioneers, pioneers themselves who no longer had someone to probably care after their stone, and then veterans. So I ended up cleaning somewhere around 250 gravestones since then. And it also has become one of my favorite pastimes for some odd reason. So what is all over the gravestones? It's mostly a substance called lichen. So it's an organism that typically forms a low crusty and leaf-like growth on rocks, walls, trees, or gravestones. It's a hybrid colony of algae or cyanobacteria living together with a fungus species and bacteria embedded in the skin in a mutualistic relationship. It can be yellow, green, brown, orange, or pretty much any color. And there's some examples of really dirty tombstones covered in lichen. And I did clean both of those stones this year, but I don't have an after photo. So the supplies that I use to clean headstones, here is the trusty cleaner called D2 Biological Solution. And I've been watching other people who clean gravestones online to kind of learn what to do appropriately, and reading the package insert, of course, of this D2. It's kind of like a magic biologic cleaner that kills at the growth over time. So the supplies I use are this D2 Biological Solution. I was lucky enough to be gifted some from Riverside Cemetery this past summer to keep working on their monuments. And it did last me all summer, and I have a little left over of those 250 that I cleaned, so it does go quite a ways. I use a garden sprayer. You don't want to use a power washer, that's too much pressure. Water, just some plain water. Add that to a bucket. And then soft bristled brush. You don't want to use like a metal wire scraper, anything like that that could damage the stone. And then a soft plastic scraper tool to get kind of at that lichen. And I'll show you a video later that kind of describes how I'm doing this. And then optional, I like to use a pH neutral soap. I use Orvis paste. And I forgot to bring it along to show, but the steps that I use I wet down the entire surface of the stone with water using that garden pump sprayer. And then I remove the visible lichen with the plastic scraper, gently. And then you remove the dirt in the water using the bucket of water mixed with a tiny bit of that Orvis paste soap. Scrub with your brushes over the surface, and then rinse again with plain water. I'm using that garden sprayer. Then I take my D2 biological solution and mist it all over the surface of the stone. You don't need to take that off. You leave it in place and walk away. You watch that D2 solution work over time. I mean, a week, a month, 2 months, you will see a difference when you use this product. You can also spray the D2 and walk away without any scrubbing, and it's good for like a fragile stone that's kind of in a deteriorating state if you didn't want to scrub that. It's good for people wanting to put in a little less effort for whatever reason, and it can take longer for the results, but that's probably the only drawback there. So do and don'ts. Get permission first. Assess the headstone for stability before you start working on it. So I like to go up and kind of move it. A lot of times you'll find the stone is not stable on the base, so I kind of just turn and don't work on those stones. Then you use a soft bristle brush and approved cleaning products. Don't use like a metal scraper. Use D2 biological solution or other approved gravestone cleaners. It's not the only product to use, but it's the only one I have used, so the only one I personally feel comfortable to recommend to you. So do not use a power washer, I've already mentioned. Don't use a sander or grinder, and don't use chemicals like bleach or acids that could really damage the stone. One thing that happens majority of the time after you apply the D2 is this blushing effect, they call it. So the stone can sometimes turn a rust-like orange color. Do not panic, this is a normal reaction. It goes away with time, and it also shows you that the cleaner is penetrating the surface of the stone and doing its job. So there's a couple examples of that. Here is a short sped up video clip of me cleaning a gravestone. Hopefully you can see it, and this is the method that I use. So there I'm scraping with the little scraper. I worked on cleaning all the upright veteran monuments that appear like this out at Riverside this year. It's not like a dramatic looking transformation, but like I said, the D2 works over time. So if we check it now, it might look quite a bit whiter than it looks in the video. So I have a bucket of various size brushes, and I kind of just assess what I need for what, smaller, larger, more stiff. Rinse it off again. Don't leave any of that soap residue on the stone, even though it's supposed to be pretty harmless to the stone. And then now I'm covering it with the D2 cleaner. Should probably use gloves, but I don't. And that's the end of that video. So it doesn't take a whole long time. It takes me anywhere from like 10 to 30 minutes, depending on the size and the details carved on the stone.
You kind of get in there on the letters, or you're just by
Yeah.
the brush to do that?
So I kind of have a toothbrush that works, or I use chopsticks to get in there and try to do my best, but you don't have to make it perfect when that D2 penetrates and works over time. So here's a couple examples of the results that I did. This is that first stone of my second great uncle. I did do a little scrubbing on the stone, but it didn't look perfect when I left. And less than a year later, I returned and you could see all the writing and all this beautiful marbling detail on the stone. I was so thrilled to see that. That was my first big job. And now a lot of these are from Riverside. This is a child named Robert Lorenzen, and he died in 1890. So I cleaned the stone in July, and as of August, you can just see it's pretty white. There's not a lot of any growth on there. One of the better results. This one I also did in the summer of 25. You can hardly tell it's dirty, but the entire lettering is filled with the lichen. So not much longer, and it appeared almost perfect. And this one is one of the first ones I did on the first day that I asked for permission to clean out at Riverside. It's such a tall stone, and I was drawn to the ones that have the lamb motif, which regularly signifies a child or an infant. So I cleaned all of those ones first, and this one was such a tall one that I was drawn to it. You can see I could barely read what was going on the stone. Then right after I did the cleaning in D2, still quite black. I did one more application of D2 somewhere between May and January. And now January, it's looking like that. So it's pretty cool. This is one of my favorite ones, a very tall stone. I had to use a step ladder to get on the top of it, as you can see there. But it's got a lot of the orange, rusty lichen on it. And then it took me quite a while to clean this one, but it was still fun. There on the end, or in the middle, is the after photo, directly after cleaning. And then we have, like a month later, the results. And it'll just keep going. So I don't have great result photos to show you. This one, Clyde Ryan, he's an infant of DH and ME Ryan. He's out at Riverside. Came to his stone and it looked like that. When I left it after cleaning, it looked like the middle one. And on the end, when I checked in a few months later in September, it was looking really satisfactory to me. This is one of my all-time favorites, the grave of Mildred Stroop. I came to it and it's bending and it's very dirty, sinking into the ground there like that. She died in 1892. She was an infant. Cleaned the grave in June of 25. And sometime in between checking back up on it, the cemetery actually straightened the headstone, which was such a thrill to me. They were tending her stone. And so now on August 29th, she looks good as new. Here's one of my other favorites. I brought out my oldest daughter, she's 9, and we cleaned this one together. So sometimes it turns into a little bit of a family affair, and I hope they will catch on someday. Starting in June, we cleaned this Carlisle Paul. He was really encrusted, and right after, looks pretty good. But then in September, you could see just how much the cleaner has continued to work, and he had died in 1920. This one I did the spray and walk away method, and it's one of my second great uncles. It's out in Roslyn, South Dakota. His name's Peter E. Wolden, and he died in childhood, but we located his graves, reading like cemetery directories, and even though his last name was spelled Bolden with a V, we determined this was him. And so I went out and cleaned he and his brother's graves, but I didn't have all my supplies with me, so I kind of just sprayed and came back about a year later, and we can see all the details popping out on his stone. The only drawback is that kind of line. Well, his stone is broken off, and it kind of sits in the base at that line. So that's about as good as it's going to get for now. Looking great to me. So what's in my graving bag? So I brought this along today. So I have my D2 cleaner, of course. I I'm just gonna show whatever comes out. Got a rag to wipe whatever mess I make. This comes in handy for brushing off for photos you might take of graves, like for find a grave requests or anything like that. I have a bouquet of roses, which I use for after photos when I clean graves, or if I just want to leave somebody a bouquet, I do that a lot. I mentioned that I use chopsticks to get in lettering, so I have a big bag of chopsticks. They don't last a super long time. I also have an American flag in here for veterans that I spot. We have a pair of rubber gloves. Like I said, I'm bad at wearing gloves. And another pair of like garden gloves for pulling weeds. I have a trowel. You never know when this will come in handy. Pruning shears. Kind of got to get invasive sometimes. I have this, which I said don't use a metal tool on a stone, but this is more for edging around the grave or like removal of sod that will build up. And I found this giant spoon at a cemetery, so I kept it along because I feel like it could come in handy. I don't know. And then last thing, I have some trash bags because if you don't want to leave a giant mess of sod and clippings, or you might find a bunch of garbage that you feel compelled to pick up, or I like to do that anyway, so always got that. And that should be all in there. And here is my bag of brushes, or bucket of brushes, I guess. So I just have a variety in here. They like this type of natural haired brush to really get onto stones. But I have the smaller size for the lettering, one with the handle when my arm gets too sore, you know, a medium size, and a toothbrush. And then I have, this is evidently something my husband used in the auto body field for applying window tint, but it works so perfectly that I have a bunch of these little guys to scrape the moss. And it's curved and pointed, so you can get in specific areas. I have this toothbrush, if I didn't show that, and then 2 sizes of scrapers for lichen. And we just kind of pick and choose what looks appropriate to use on the stone. So there's those. And then I have this comic strip that I like to share. It's one of my favorites. I found it during Memorial Day. So you can see a tombstone and the grass is growing up around it. And then he comes along, cut, chip, brush, clip, brush, clean, wash, trim, polish. And his friend says, "You sure this is what you want to do on your day off?" He says, "I've never been more sure." And that's how I feel a lot of the time. I have the copy of this on my graving kit in my car. And then just may they all rest in peace. I hope that my page will remain respectful and a resource to remember people and just continue to grow. It's been such a fun time so far. So thank you so much. I guess I was going to ask if there are any questions for me.
Sure. Where do you buy your products?
Okay, so there is a handout in those folders. At the bottom of the handout, I say purchase D2 at, and I gave 2 different sites, gravestonecleaner.com or d2bio.com.
It's not that paste.
And I bought the Orvis paste at Runnings in the horse area. Nice. Yes, I heard it was good.
So, you switch to spray the D2 on, what if it rains right after you leave? Yes,
So it's not ideal.
you go back and reapply?
Right, you should maybe.
Yeah, that's what I'm
So yeah, watch the weather is ideal, but I don't always do that.
So do you contact anybody for any stones or tipped over?
I mean, some of the stones that were unstable, I had to let the manager at the cemetery know. I know one of them got fixed, but a lot of times they don't have necessarily the funding to fix them, so I think that's one of the issues going on.
Any other?
Yeah,
Does it make a difference what the monument was actually made out of? Is it
Sure.
different?
and I'm not the best resource on like what a stone is made of. I can tell something's historic or whatnot, but yeah, so there are different products for different types, but the D2 can generally be used on everything. Maybe not like a bronze plaque would probably not be productive, but otherwise it's pretty good for everything.
I think most of them are made out of marble.
Yeah, and it's perfect for marble.
Or what?
And granite, yep.
And it works with down sandstone.
Yes, sandstone.
Any other questions?